There is an organization that I would like to introduce you to. It is called the Love Not Blood campaign. It is a campaign that focuses on families and communities and racism in policing. Basically, like many progressive organizations, activist organizations, these are folks who come together because they want to make the world a better place. I'm very happy to introduce you to one of those people, Cephus Johnson, also known as Uncle Bobby, founder of the Love Not Blood campaign, joins us now. Cephus, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. And a quick correction, founder, I'm actually co-founder along with my wife, Auntie, as she is known as Auntie B. So I'm co-founder.
Well, I did not mean to slight your wife. I would never do that. And it doesn't surprise me at all that somebody who is close to you is also involved in this campaign. So you are the co-founder. Tell the audience about Love Not Blood.
Sure. So basically, we're a 501c3 grassroots organization that was founded in 2014. I must say, though, when my nephew, for the listeners who may not know Oscar Grant is, I'll explain later, but I started the Oscar Grant Foundation in 2010 of August, and because my sister was voiceless, when she was able to acquire her voice, which was about 5 years later, 2014, I gifted it back to her and Oscar's daughter, Tatiana, so that she could lead it in the spirit that God or Oscar was speaking to her to take it. And we continued on in the Love Not Blood campaign, which officially started in 2014, to continue the same work we were doing in the Oscar Grant Foundation, but to expand and to include families, not just the directly impacted mother or father, but the uncles, the sisters, the brothers, and even community members that was really close to the individual that had been killed. And so, as stated, our guiding principle is simple. We believe that those directly impacted should lead the movement for a right to live free from state-sanctioned violence. Of course, we pursue this goal through healing circles, healing conferences, movement building, economic justice, and advocacy. You know, our commitment to addressing police violence, I believe, sets us apart. We provide, of course, holistic care that encompasses physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual well-being.
Well, let's focus for now on your efforts to address police violence. What specifically are you doing on that front?
Well, of course, we work with families that were directly impacted by police violence. So, you know, if it's God's will that we can get to this family, we get to the family. Of course, a lot has to do with having the information and even knowing. And many of it, of course, families that have heard about us and call us up. So we will go definitely embrace those families, let them know that first they're not walking alone. You know, let them know the different areas that we specialize in, and that is, again, the healing circles, of course, the healing conferences, and
for those people, hang on a second, Cephus. For those people who aren't familiar, talk about what a healing circle is.
Yes. So basically, a healing circle is impacted families that have suffered the same type of trauma coming together and having an open discussion by embracing with a newly inducted family. No one wants to be inducted or be a part of this club. But if you happen to be, you're not alone. And so you come into a space where those that have suffered the same trauma you have, you can better relate to. And those that have suffered the trauma that's a little further down the line share and work with you to begin the process of not only just healing, but the pursuit of justice for your loved one.
Mm-hmm. It is people who have walked down this road, helping other people walking down that road.
That is correct. That is so correct. Yes.
So when you want to focus on police violence, is there anything that your organization can do that actually involves police officers? Do they ever come to any of the meetings or any of the healing circles? How do you do that outreach?
So the trauma, sadly, for the family members first, can be re-traumatized just by actually meeting an officer, say, in that space. That's a very sacred space. So no one in the police uniform or even outside of police uniform is actually in that space to recreate the trauma of that individual or individuals. But how we basically deal with the police on various levels, give an example, during our journey with the murder of Oscar Grant, we was able to create a citizen oversight with an independent auditor. And so in that space, in that arena, sitting at the, whether it be the BARC board meetings or city council meetings or whatever space you have these meetings at, there's an opportunity for us to engage the officers about various pieces of, we'll just say, the citizen oversight board with the independent auditor investigation concerning the police officers. And also, we also work on remedies to better guide the policy and procedures that officers use in, sadly, their course of duty. I shouldn't say sadly, but in their course of duty. And to cite an example would be the concerns about police officers turning off their lapel cameras and engaging a young man or young female in an arrest. If that happens, right, there is a conversation and then an opportunity for us to help work and correct that problem area. So in many ways, that is how we do it. We've, of course, passed many pieces of legislation. Many, sadly, has been pushed back on. The legislation that's pushed back on is not to handicap the policing agency, but to bring in policy and procedures that help better protect our lives and our rights.
I'm speaking with Cephus Johnson, also known as Uncle Bobby, founder of the Love Not Blood campaign. We are going to take a quick break and be back with more right after this.
If you missed any of today's show, you can listen on SoundCloud or iTunes. Just search WCPT 820. Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Tom Hartman.
Remember Ronald Reagan telling us that if we just cut taxes on rich people, it would trickle down to the rest of us? It sounded so nice at the time, right? If we just end the unions, companies will be more profitable and they'll want to pay you better and give you better benefits. You know, if we just move 60,000 factories out of the United States, there'll be an explosion of tech jobs. All these white-collar jobs, they'll pay so well.
The Tom Hartman radio program. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on WCPT 820, where facts matter. This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We broadcast live from Netroots Nation 23, but there were a lot of people there on various panels that we wanted to talk to and didn't get a chance to speak with. One of those folks joins us now, Cephus Johnson, Uncle Bobby, founder of the Love Not Blood campaign. He was on the panel of the keynote with Tennessee State Senator Justin Jones, and he was on a couple other panels. And Cephus, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I know with one of the panels, you and others were sharing personal experiences about interactions with either structural or systemic racism. And I think one of the most effective ways to talk about an issue and make people understand is to personalize it. It's one thing to speak, at an intellectual or theoretical level, but when you say, I want to tell you about something that I lived through, something that happened to me, I think that resonates with people and teaches people in a way that is really effective and really gets inside. What was something that you talked about or one of the other panelists talked about like that?
Sure. First, thank you, too, Joan, for having me and granting me this opportunity to share that experience. I highlight, a little bit of mine and then, of course, a little bit of some of the other fathers that was on the panel. We talk about a personal relationship, whether it been your son, daughter, in my case, my nephew. What was that person like? Who was you? because many times the viewers of this tragic incident only know what the police have shared with the world or what they got from mass media. And a lot of times it's so sadly tainted in such a way that the poor individual that has been spoken about has been criminalized, even dehumanized. And so we reshape that. We share who our loved one was, who they, represented. And not only that, who they were as a person. We rehumanizes them, take the criminality out of what happened so that people can see them as an individual, as if that was one of their own personal friends, a loved one, a son, uncle, a father.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if I was to talk about Oscar in a sense, Oscar, when he was 5 years old, was, he was unafraid to speak in front of people. To give an example, the church that we attended back in the day when Oscar was really young, about 5 years old, he would open up the church in prayer. And we would say there would be on average 1,500 to 2,500 people, attendees at this church, where he had no understanding of what public speaking was about and would just open up and pray. He was a gifted child. He learned to play chess at a very early age and was very good at it and very competitive, always wanting to beat his uncle, talking about me, right? Mm-hmm. And so just loved it. And he was so close to me with my son that I had to have him and my son stand as my best man in our wedding.
Aww.
And so, that was Oscar, in my life as a person, but, in many folks' lives, as a person. That's why Ryan Coogler wanted to focus on how Oscar was loved rather than the tragic event that happened to him. So he shaped, for those who may not have seen the movie Fruitvale Station, but if you see the movie Fruitvale Station, what you'll get out of it is that could have been your loved one, your friend, your uncle, your nephew, your brother, your uncle, or somebody close to you that you can feel and understand that this was a human being that had a life. And of course, sadly, his life ended in a tragic way.
Wow. When you talk about that with people, what kind of a reaction do you get?
Well, I tell you, many years ago, about almost 14 years ago, about more than 13 years ago, of course, he was killed 14 years ago, we started a campaign of speaking to students, community centers, even elementary schools. And many of these students we spoke to, we didn't know that we had changed their lives, their trajectory of what they were planning to do. And so many end up going to school to become lawyers, psychologists, social workers, working in the area to make the society a better place. And so when I shared, and of course when my wife shared, and then other fathers that have shared with us at these colleges and these high schools and these middle schools, these students were so impacted that they went out and became what we needed to help make this place a better place. And then they will walk up to you years later, because, at least I personally don't remember, because they were just little children. I would say, Uncle Bobby, when you came to my school when I was in the 7th grade, it was so impactful that I am a psychologist today. I just graduated from Howard.
Wow. That's amazing.
But yeah, that's what we get. And, and it's so inspiring that's why we can't sit down on this. We have to tell the story. We have to keep it personal. And of course, it does impact and change lives. Because today, it's all about really making this system a better place for all of us, not just a few of us.
I know you were involved in the creation of the National Impacted Families Movement of Police Accountability. Talk to us a little bit about that, if you would.
Sure. I have to step back in time quickly. So Oakland had embraced us as a family, loved on us, stood with us, cried with us, prayed with us, went back and forth to court with us, but most importantly, shouted out, I am Oscar Grant. And it was for the first time in California state history, an officer was arrested, charged, convicted, and sent to jail. And so we know that because of the embrace and the love, giving us a chance to be able to stand up, to begin to understand what happened, to begin to even help us learn to articulate our story. That same message that I got here in the Bay Area or Oakland and in the Bay Area, and then, of course, the state of California, was the same essence of love that I wanted to carry forth to every family that we could possibly meet. And so we begin to meet families all over the country and embrace these families, love on these families. And we have conferences that we put on that is a network of families that we have embraced and met, and then other families that have told other families about it, that we make sure that we find ways and means to get the funding to bring as many families to the conference for programming, for networking, for just learning that you're not alone, and that, of course, with all our voices being shouted together, is undeniable about this harm and this crime and this pain that we are experiencing, so making it more heard by legislators when they see the numbers rather than an individual. So, yes, that network was brought out of bringing these families together. Sadly, over the 14 years, we have got over almost 800 families in our database that we work with. And we do conferences once a year that's called a healing conference, but it's called Families United for Justice Network Conference. And it might be, last year was in Myrtle Beach with 235 families. The year before was in San Diego. We had 325 families. 1 year we had it in Vegas. Actually, 2019, it was in Vegas. And we had 175 families. So sadly, every year the number has just gone up. But a lot has to do with, of course, the community helping us make this a reality to these families. Because our idea about these conferences is to make sure that they don't have to come and worry about how to get there. We raise the funding to pay for the airfare, the hotel stay, which is for 3 days, and all food and lodging, so that this way when they show up, they just bring themselves to be filled with a good vibration, to be loved on, to be recharged, and even to get some more knowledge on how to articulate your loved one's story, how to deal with city council, how to deal with your state legislators, how to pass laws, how to deal with the issue of dealing with the agency that actually killed your loved one, how to overcome that trauma experience of just not wanting to even deal with them, but yet to deal with them and bringing about real systemic change in your local area. So that's what this network of families does for each other. It's not just us, but it's all of us helping to teach each other how to move forward and bring about a real just society.
I really wish there wasn't a need for an organization like this, but as you've mentioned, there are more members of your group every year. Do you see the tide turning at any point?
Well, sadly, not so much. Giving a quick example, George Floyd, we already know, especially in the state of California, passed an AB 71, which is the use of force data collection that the Department of Justice of California utilizes to determine how many people are being killed in the state of California. So that number hasn't really been decreasing. In some areas, it actually has gone up. And that's what I was going to say about George Floyd. So the highest killing that ever occurred right now since all the killings that have taken place was immediately after George Floyd. The number rose. And so that leads us to the question of why. But what really is happening, too, that may be unforeseen to many, is that legislation is being passed that has, in some ways, begin to reform the agencies in itself. And I can speak more about the state of California. Of course, AB 71, use of force data collection, 2015, 2016, the AB 953, the Racial Identification Profiling Act, 2017, SB 1421, the Right to Know, 2017 also, or 2019 was 748, the video auto release in 45 days, as well as AB 392, the most strictly used of force legislation in the United States, better known as the Stephon Clark Law, SB 2, decertification law. that in the state of California, officers sadly were killed, and then they would actually transfer to another agency, whether it be in the state or out of the state, and then be involved in another shooting. So how do we track those type of officers? AB 490, which is the chokehold fixation law that we got passed to keep folks from putting a knee on your neck and sadly killing you, as in the fashion of George Floyd. So, I say that to say that as far as legislation is concerned, we see a change in happening, because in the earlier days, nothing could get passed. But now people have seen enough of it that they know that there has to be something put in place, because the power of the police to use deadly force is a significant responsibility that we can give any government official. That responsibility must be guided by, as I say, common sense legislation that protect human rights and save human lives. And so that's what this work is really all about, making sure that no one has to die wrongfully in the hands of the police, whom we always pray and believe that they're coming to actually help rather than kill. And I'll cite this example, and then I'll be quiet on it. The mental crisis individual, as we know, sadly, is being killed by police that is not trained how to mentally engage somebody in a crisis. So we were just standing with Corey Bush, representative out of Missouri, passing the People Response Act, which is making sure that we have professional certified trainers that comes out and deal with a person in a mental state crisis, rather than the police coming to criminalize them, and sadly many are being killed. It's a large percent. At one time, it was 56% of the police killings had to do with somebody in a mental state crisis. It's a little lower now.
We have that problem in Chicago, too, with mental health crises. As these measures proceed through legislatures, please give us an update. Would like to follow up on this. And thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. We are out of time, but that's Cephus, Uncle Bobby Johnson, founder of the Love Not Blood campaign. Thank you, Cephus, for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Thank you, Joan, for having me. And if anyone wants to donate to support our work, again, the lovenotbloodcampaign.com, you can go there. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Joan. Appreciate it.